Moving forward in this course on lighting essential concepts, we're going to take a look at baked lighting, and this is going to go in 2 steps. So the first step is going to be about Lightmass. So we're going to talk about how to bake the lighting, what Lightmass actually is, performance implications of baked lighting, the quality and settings for it, the importance, volume, and Lightmass portals. We have the level open called baked lighting _ Lightmass, found in lighting _ rendering, essential concepts, start assets, and there's a level right here. Unlit level of the apartment and swimming pool, etc. And this one has a couple of lamps in it, so you're welcome to work with those and try to have those lamps light the environment. But I'm going to keep it simple and show you the basics only. Now we're going to bake the lighting, because as explained briefly in earlier parts on this entire course on different parts of the rendering and lighting, Unreal has both baked lights, static lights, and dynamic lights. They both have different pros and cons. Baked lights usually have the best quality. They support global illumination, they support radiosity and other light bouncing in general, and they will therefore usually give you the most realistic best result. If you're after the absolute best graphical quality, baked lighting tends to work better, but the biggest drawback with baked lighting is that you cannot change it anymore. It is static. It's otherwise also referred to as static lighting. Once you've rendered it out, once you pre-calculated and baked the lighting will be set. The only way you can change it is to re-render the whole thing, which obviously takes time. This is going to become more obvious as we do it, so let's place a light again. I'm just going to place light, point light, drag it in, and let's try to place it somewhere in the environment where it creates a lot of shadow. For example here, behind this little low wall in the kitchen, so most of the living room here is shadowed, because we're going to use that as a way of seeing how the light will bounce around after the bake. Now if you just place the light, you can see, it might be hard to see, but it might actually even say preview in the shadow. That means that shadow is unbaked, uncalculated, and it expects to be able to calculate it, and we'll say preview. You might also see, not displayed over here, but it might become obvious to you that there is a red text in the top left that says lighting needs to be rebuilt. The act of baking the lighting is also called rebuilding. Now without changing anything, let's just keep everything as is except the mobility setting. But otherwise, let's just keep it as it is and let's just bake it. So mobility controls whether the light is dynamic or baked or static. Static, baked, same thing. So let's put it to static, because yes, we're going to be baking this light entirely. And then without any other settings again, let's just go to build in the top. But don't press build itself, it's usually better to press the little arrow pointing down next to it. And we will take build lighting only. Now this will start Lightmass. Lightmass is a separate program that you can find in your taskbar near the time on your computer. And if you open that separate application up, this is what you would see. This is Lightmass. This is in fact a swarm agent as part of Lightmass. Lightmass is the system that bakes the lighting in Unreal. And that system, that program, has another program called Swarm Agent, which is the agent that receives the information from Lightmass. Because it's an agent, it means you can set up an entire network of different swarm agents, so you can do distributed rendering of the lighting. In this case, my network has only me, so this is my computer. You can see the different CPUs on the PC while it's rebuilding, and you can see the overall progress. Also of note is that the progress goes very fast towards the end. It goes progressively faster. So don't be too confused by the speed in the beginning. The first few percent are very slow, and then it will go much faster. And then usually, very typically, it tends to stop towards 99 point something %, as you can see here too. And the very end is very slow again. So that's something to get used to. But if you just give it a few minutes, it's not particularly slow. It should be done with the building, and it's going to export the light information it has calculated back to the editor. The editor will automatically import it, which it has done now. And the result is this. You can see that we accidentally moved the light, that we have some lighting here behind the wall now, because the light has bounced around. The baking has calculated the bounces of the lighting, and the result is this. Now again, the issue is, and the drawback is, you cannot move these lights. If you would now take this light and start moving it, it will go wrong. In fact, see, now we have 2 different shadows. One shadow is a preview shadow, and is therefore a dynamic shadow temporarily, even if this is set to static. The other one is baked. So every time you modify a light after it has been baked, you're going to have to do this again, re-render the result. Performance wise, this is extremely cheap. So setting lights to static and then baking them give you the best possible performance you can get. In fact, what it really does internally, and this is something we'll talk about in the next chapter, is that it creates light maps for all the models in the environment. So essentially it bakes the lighting to a texture, and then the texture is automatically applied to every model in the environment. Since it is just a texture, it doesn't matter what your lights do, how many lights you have, and so on, and what settings the lights have. Eventually the texture will be baked into a picture, into a texture anyway. So with static lighting, with baked lighting, it doesn't matter whether you have one light or you have 10,000 lights. They will result in the exact same speed, the exact same performance running that environment. But obviously the rendering process might be a lot longer for those 10,000 lights compared to the one light, but once it has rendered, the runtime performance will be identical. So that's really important to note. This is absolutely best for performance. So if you're low on hardware power, you tend to want to stick to static, and if you want to have the most realistic lighting, including all the light bouncing and so on, you want to have a lot of static. Now, in terms of baked lighting quality, the quality is partially defined by the light map itself on the model, which is something we'll discuss in the next chapter. In fact, this might be hard to see in the video, but there's some artifacts here near the bottom of the wall. That is because of the light map. Ignoring that, the quality is primarily controlled by lighting quality, and here you have a couple of presets. Obviously, changing this would give you better quality, but not only that, there is a second set of settings which also affect quality. So this is separate from this group over here, settings, world settings, and in world settings there is a section called Lightmass settings. If you expand that, there's additional quality settings here, so they coexist. For the absolute highest quality you can get, you would need to change both this setting and the settings over here. Now there's a lot of settings here, and this is too much for an introductory course, but the most important ones are the number of indirect lighting bounces. This is how many times the light is bouncing. Static lighting level scale. This is the overall quality of the lighting, and number of times the skylight is bouncing. So how many bounces we get from atmospheric lights, skylights. And you also have indirect lighting quality, which again affects the overall quality of the lighting, in particular for the bounce lighting. So those first four values are the most important ones to look deeper into if you're after the best possible quality. And again, every time you change the value, you're going to have to build the lighting again. Then there is something called an importance volume, and an importance volume is rather important as the name implies. The full name is a Lightmass importance volume, which can be found on the left panel here in the Place tab, Volumes, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easy to read, Lightmass importance volume. You should, if you're going to have baked lighting in the environment, you should always have this. In fact, it's almost always advisable to have Lightmass importance volume, even if you have a lot of dynamic lighting and so on, because it does a couple of more things than what I'm about to explain. Once you drag the volume in, you get a box, and switch back to details here, you can change the size of the box. So essentially type in the values. I'm not sure certain what values it should be anymore, but enter the values of the box that make it big enough to cover the entire area that needs to receive high quality lighting. So this is what it does. It creates higher quality lighting inside of this box. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want the render time to lose time on things that are far, far away. So we essentially manually define an area that is supposed to receive higher quality lighting than far away geometry. So place the box around anything that needs to receive better quality lighting than the rest. Usually that means the playable area in a game, or the areas near the camera in a film or a building and so on. So near where you expect the camera to be. In this case, let's say this is about correct. It doesn't have to be very precise. If it overshoots the building by a little bit, that's totally fine. Don't overdo it, but again, it doesn't have to be extremely precise. So in this case, it's covering everything inside. It might eventually be better to make the box the entire area of the swimming pool. Swimming pool plays as well, but this will do. And again, rebuild lighting, and you should get a little bit better quality lighting inside, and it does a couple of other additional things too. And then lastly, similar to the volume, there's a similar thing called a light portal. And if you can't immediately find it, you can simply look for it as well. Just look for portal. There's a Lightmass portal, drag it in, and you can change the scale here in the properties to define how big it is. In this case, it should be as big as the window that we have here. So that's about a value of 300, I think. Again, it doesn't have to be super precise. Do try to somewhat match the correct size, but it doesn't be extremely precise. Something like that. I've got 10, 275, 125. Place it in the middle and rebuild the lighting again. What a Lightmass portal does is it helps the lighting from the skylight and from the atmosphere, therefore, to bounce into the structure. Because imagine, for example, that you have a church, and a church or some other medieval building might have very narrow windows. The chances that the light will bounce through that very narrow space and properly illuminate the interior space are pretty small. So instead what we do is we place the Lightmass portal, and the Lightmass portal tells the engine to place additional focus and effort on trying to bounce the lighting through this space. So this location is going to get more lighting to bounce through it, therefore the interior will be better illuminated by the sky from outside due to the light bouncing. In this particular example I have right here, this will not do anything because I only have a point light. There is no atmospherical skylight set up, so it wouldn't do much in this case. But with a larger example where you would use skylight and then you do rebuild the lighting, this should make a minor difference. Good, so we can wrap this up. You're welcome to experiment a little bit more. If you look in the level in finished assets, you can see what I did over there. I placed a couple of more lights, placed a light there, placed some spotlights there, and then essentially build it. And this is what I ended up with, but it's the same idea. So we've gone through how to bake lighting, what Lightmass is, a quick word about performance of baked lighting quality and settings, and an importance, volume and Lightmass portals.